we see that Jesus said, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them there and departed. So Jesus letting you know that you can be in out of order seeking a sign. And like I said, it has to be the situation, because Gideon saw the sign and the Lord gave him a sign. So it has to be the situation. In this case, they really wasn't feeling Jesus anyway. They wouldn't believe in Jesus. They didn't have no faith in Jesus. So that was a problem. And they was really asking for a sign, really just to battle with him, come up with something against him. So that's all they were doing. And he let them know, look, all the signs you need are right in front of you. But the only thing I'm going to do special for you at your request, because he was doing all kind of stuff. He was healing the sick, opening the blind eyes. You know, he was doing everything, you know, that you could ask. But so that it was no need for them to request. So, and that's the way it is. You could be in line and you request in any way, that can be a problem. You know, God already showing you. Then again, these, you know, we reading about people in the Bible who were requesting signs. Gideon was requesting a sign regarding a mission that the Lord was sending him on. So let's read something else here while we're in Matthew 6. Because we don't want to get too caught up on our own personal things. So when it comes to, you know, say you thinking about taking another job, I wouldn't bother the Lord for no sign on that. Either you want to take the job or you don't. You know, because the Lord tell you, don't get caught up on that kind of stuff. Because that's personal kind of world. You know, we all, you can seek the Lord and you know, seek the Lord's direction. But other than that, that's your decision to make. And there's no need to really get in depth with, say, well, Lord, show me a sign if you want me to do it. Because at the end of the day, that's neither here nor there, whether you get the other job. So we talking about different things. We talking about Gideon going on a mission for God, as opposed to us talking about our own little personal stuff, which the Lord tell you, don't get caught up on that. This is what he's saying here. Matthew 6 and verse 24. Read that.
No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. He cannot serve God and mammon.
See, he said you can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and mammon. So you don't want to be caught up on mammon is money. You don't want to be caught up on that at all. But go ahead.
Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these.
Okay, so now, the Lord is telling you, don't get so caught up in material stuff, period. Don't get so caught up. He's saying you can't change one thing about certain situations. Which of you taking thought can add 1 cubit to his statue? But go ahead, what verse yet?
Verse 30.
Go ahead.
Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith?
Okay.
Take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things.
He know you need certain things. He already know you need it, but he's telling you, don't get so caught up in it and bent out of shape and concerned about it Your goal need to be seeking the kingdom first. So in Gideon's request, his request was about doing God's will. Something God was telling him to do. He asked for a sign. It had nothing to do with his personal life or, his personal goals, his personal endeavors. Too many times some people don't even really follow the Lord or serve the Lord. They think the Lord is just guiding them on their little personal journey. Look, if you're not fearing God and keeping his commandments, your personal journey don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. We here to serve God, not have him serve us. So we don't want to get caught up on our own things. So if it's something that's dealing with our personal life, like for instance, we open up congregations in different locations across the country, and we'll seek the Lord on that. We'll go out our way to seek the Lord, pray and fast and all of it to seek the Lord. But that's because we want his direction. It's pertaining to his, something on his behalf. It's not something that we trying to do personally. So that's it on that. We're going to move on to another one. I'm going to check Facebook again. And, I'm going to ask the phone first. I'm going to see what we're working with on the phone. Good. How you doing, Brother John? You're making it pretty good. Okay. Well, I wouldn't call it paying tithes because the tithes was strictly, it was given to the people of God to take care of his business, concerning ministries, etc. And if you got some people that's doing that, they will have something. They will be able to do something for the poor, but it's even bigger than that. And I'm gonna give you an example. Because sometimes I heard people, say that before, but you don't have that. You don't have it in the Bible. The first. It's feeding the poor and all that is fine. But as far as God's ministry go, Jesus had 12 disciples. He took them on a mission. Even when he died and resurrected and left, he was leaving. He told them to continue to the mission. And the mission that he told them to continue was to spread the gospel. He didn't say, well, go, feed the poor all over the place, feed the poor. He could have said that, but that wasn't the goal he was sending them on. He sent them to go preach the gospel. Even Paul said that. Paul said, the Lord didn't even send me to baptize. He sent me to preach the gospel. So we have to keep the Lord's mission straight. So you might be doing some good with your money. You might be helping some people, but we can't call it tithes because tithes is a term that's used as far as putting forth toward God and toward his ministry in the earth. So here's a little example, because and Judas was with Jesus. He had ulterior motive because he was a thief and he stole from the money that they had. He did that. But now, he still had a problem with something Jesus was doing, or they was doing, some money was spent here. Let me see if I can find. I thought it was Luke. Turn to Luke 12. I think it is. One second here. Yeah. Well, that's the only way all over the scripture. That's the only way tithes work. You took them to, not necessarily the church. You took them to the people that the Lord had in charge. When he set up the Levites, they took them to the Levites. Even somebody who we know didn't need tithes, and that would have been Melchizedek. He was an immortal, but Abraham still took it and gave it to him. Abraham could have said, well, I'm going to take care of the poor people. No, he didn't take care of nothing. He took it and he gave it to Melchizedek. But look at this on the poor note. John 12. I was looking in Luke 12. John 12. And let's pick it up at verse 1. John 12 and verse 1. Okay. Go ahead, read it.
That Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, for Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him.
Now this is after he had raised Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and the Lord woke him up, and he hanging out, eating and hanging with Jesus and the family. So they had a supper at their house. Go ahead.
Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment.
Okay, so look. It said, then took Mary, which was Lazarus' sister, a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, expensive stuff, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Verse 4.
Then said one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor?
See, so now he suggested that, look, this ointment could have been sold and given, this some expensive stuff, it could have been sold and given to the poor. So the gist of it is, everything that's for God's ministry, it's not meant for the poor. Because else Jesus would have just told his disciples, go feed the poor. But no, Jesus said, go preach the gospel. So that's the mission. So even this right here, Judas had ulterior motive, like I said, but yet still it didn't matter. Jesus didn't even address his ulterior motives, because I'm sure he knew he was a thief and stealing from the money bag. But Jesus didn't address that. What did Jesus say? Go ahead.
As he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag and bare what was put therein.
Right. He didn't care for the poor, but Jesus didn't even address his ulterior motives. What did Jesus say? Verse 7.
Then said Jesus, Let her alone. Against the day of my burying have she kept this.
See, he said, leave her alone. Against the day of my burying have she kept it. So in other words, this money, this expensive ointment that could have been sold and given to the poor, even according to Judas, which obviously is true. It's expensive stuff, evidently. He wasn't lying about that. It could have been sold and given to the poor, but that wasn't what it was for. It was for something else, dealing with Jesus and his ministry, dealing with him, his burial. So that lets you know that's not the criteria which you are giving tithes for. That's not the criteria. That's just a small piece of the puzzle. So Jesus said, leave her alone. Then he said something else, verse 8.
For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always.
He said, look, the poor you always have with you, so you can help them whenever you get a chance, but me you don't always have. And this ointment had its purpose, aside from doing something else and helping the poor. But now let's go back to Genesis. I'm going to show you about Abraham. Genesis 14. Genesis 14, and we're going to see what he actually did with tithes. And he went and had a war with some people and was able to what does that say?
Dying.
Is the battery still dying?
Yeah.
Is that one that ain't too good?
Yeah, it's probably not working.
Let's see. One sec. Let me switch these up then. One second. I'm gonna switch them up. Let me put that one in there. Okay. It should be better. That one ain't too good. So anyway, Genesis 14. Genesis 14, and we're going to pick it up at verse... This is after Abraham got back. And he brought back all this. 16. Genesis 14 and 16. Abraham went on this mission to fight these kings who had kidnapped Lot from Sodom and Gomorrah. And he came back, he was successful, and he came back with a whole lot of riches, wealth. Go ahead.
And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people.
Uh-huh.
And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale.
Go ahead, 18.
And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God.
Now Melchizedek, those that know anything should know this is none other than Jesus. So this Melchizedek, he was, the Bible say, without father, without mother, without descent. He wasn't an ordinary person. And the point is, he really don't need no tithes. He don't need anything if he without father, without mother, without descent, without beginning days or end of life. He do not need anything. But now notice what Abraham did. He met him, and he had bread and wine like Jesus had on the last Passover. But go ahead.
And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth.
So he blessed Abraham, first and foremost. Go ahead.
And blessed be the Most High God, which have delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all.
And it said he gave him tithes of all. That's what Abraham did. Now flip over to, let's get another idea what this was. Flip over to Hebrews 7. Hebrews 7. And pick it up at verse 1 when you get there. Hebrews 7 and verse 1. And we're going to expound on that a little bit more. A little bit of what I was just saying about it. Hebrews 7 and verse 1. Go ahead and read it.
For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him.
Okay. This Melchizedek, king of Salem, which is peace, who met Abraham when he got back from that slaughter. And what did Abraham do?
To whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first being by interpretation king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace.
So it said, notice it said, to whom Abraham gave a tenth part of all. So Abraham just gave it to the priest. That's who he gave it to. Because Melchizedek was a priest. So we talking about, if we calling some tithes, we talking about giving it to, you know, somebody that's supposed to be taking care of the Lord's business, a priest. You know, later on, it went to the Levites that were priests. Some people say, well, you don't know who the Levites are, so you don't have to do it. Well, Abraham was before Levi, and he didn't give it to Levi. He gave it to Melchizedek. So it's to take care of God's business, period. So let's look at that right quick. Go to Leviticus. Let's look at what the Lord set up with Israel. So, and then we go to the New Testament. We saw that Jesus himself had a money bag, and all the money wasn't meant to be given to the poor, because he showed you that with that ointment. Now, else he would have said, yeah, you're right, sell it and give it to the poor. We're going to look at Leviticus, the 26th chapter. Let's see, 26, 27, 27. Leviticus 27. Pick it up at verse. I see some other stuff. I don't see exactly what I'm looking for. 1 second. Yeah, 27 and 30. Read 30.
And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord.
Okay, so all the tithe of the land, whether the seed of the land or whether the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. So now we talking about tithe is a tenth. So he's saying all the tithe of the land belong to the Lord. So he's not telling us that that's all to be used for the poor. But go to Numbers right quick. Now read verse. Keep reading. Go ahead, 31. Then we're gonna go to Numbers.
And if a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes, he shall add thereto the fifth part thereof.
So even if you say a man, if it's his tithes, he redeemed it, they had a system where he had to add more on top of it, kind of like interest. But go ahead.
And concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord.
See, the tenth shall be holy to the Lord. So, but it's not telling us nothing about it's supposed to be just used for the poor. Go to Numbers 18 right quick. Numbers 18. Numbers 18. And we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up at verse 24. Numbers 18 and verse 24. Go ahead and read that.
But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as an heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit.
Okay, so now, here he said the tithes of the children of Israel, that's the whole nation, which they offer as a heave offering unto the Lord. He said, I've given them to the Levites to inherit. Go ahead.
Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, When ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up an heave offering of it for the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe.
Okay, go ahead.
And this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you, as though it were the corn of the threshing floor, and as the fullness of the winepress.
Okay, so now even when the Levites got the tithes, he's not telling us anything about when it's all used for the poor. First and foremost, the people were bringing it to the priest. So the individual was not supposed to say, well, you know, I'm just going to use my tithes how I choose. It just don't work like that. Now, I'll be cautioning people about, because preachers begging for tithes now, I'll be cautioning people about just giving tithes to a so-called man of God who's not taking care of God's business. So that needs to be scrutinized, because if Jesus said, beware of false prophets, and they come to you in sheep's clothing, but anyway, they raven and wolves, they trying to take advantage, a lot of them begging for money and want money, then you should beware of that. You need to wait till you find a church or organization that is taking care of God's business. So I wouldn't say just give it to anybody that call themselves a man of God, but it was given to men of God. There's no way around that. There's no way to get around that. So hopefully that answered that. We're going to go to, let me see something here. 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Quite a few on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that for me. Read that one.
Okay. Let's see. Everyone else is now muted. Everyone else is now unmuted.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cheryl. No, you don't find it in the Bible. And the only thing that we find, in the scripture that would deal with something like that. And I know now it's becoming legal in a lot of places. And it's still hard to trust it, because even though it is legal in some states, the federal government still haven't legalized it. So technically, you could still get in trouble with it. So personally, good thing, hey, I stopped smoking that a long time ago when it was illegal, so I don't have to worry about that. But I would say be careful dealing with it, even if it's so-called legal. Then nowadays, the stuff that they got. Ain't no telling what they got in stuff nowadays. So I see, because I know people even back in the day that got a hold of some bad something, whether it's got something to do with alcohol, got something to do with smoking, and they messed up to this day. So you want to be careful with any kind of thing that you using to alter your mind, because it can alter your mind for good. So, but as far as the scripture go, the only thing pertinent is where he talks about on that level, obeying the laws. And like I said, I know it's legal, getting to be legal in a lot of places. But I'm gonna read something else here in 1 Corinthians 6. So there's really no scriptures on it, but of course, my judgment is to stay away from it. That's my judgment on it. So he says here, this is 1 Corinthians 6. Pick it up at verse 12. We're going to read that one verse. 1 Corinthians 6 and 12. Read that.
All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient.
Mm-hmm.
All things are lawful for me, but I would not be brought under the power of any.
Okay, so even if it's something, like I said, it's getting legal in a lot of places, so that don't mean that that's something that you just jump on the bandwagon with. He said, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. So just because it's lawful don't mean I need to, jump on the bandwagon and deal with it. Then, and in this case, it really applies, because we could take it and say, well, it's, it don't really say it's a sin. But things that ordinarily don't have to be a sin can become a sin if you misuse it or you let it control you. And that's what happens. That's what, marijuana is one of those things. Alcohol is same difference. People say, well, it's no sin to gamble. But yeah, people gamble away everything and mess up. So that's where the problem come in at. And that's where sin come in at. Because anything that you put too much credence in and literally make a god out of it is controlling you. That's a problem. So what he say here, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. So he said, look, it don't matter. So it shouldn't be nothing that we have to do. You must have. Just like even, I noticed some brothers in certain places, they say, well, they smoking cigarettes. There's no laws against that at all. But this can even apply to that. I had this conversation. I was in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. Because he said, I would not be brought under the power of any. So if you cannot make it without smoking a cigarette, it's time for you to take a look at that. Especially we were talking about as it pertains to the Sabbath. Really, and when I was new in the word, back in the 80s, I smoked cigarettes then, and I would not smoke on the Sabbath. I made up my mind. I said, well, I don't need to smoke on the Sabbath. I was doing good until I started going to class with a bunch of brothers, and everybody was lighting up on the Sabbath. And I started doing it. I'm not going to lie. I started doing it too, because everybody around was doing it. They like after class, they outside smoking. Even back then, my teacher smoked. I don't know if he smoked on the Sabbath, but I started doing it and found I knew it was wrong. So I said, look, I just quit altogether. I quit, period. I left it alone, period. Even my teacher, he quit, period. So it wasn't even no issue with smoking on the Sabbath. But there's no need to smoke on the Sabbath, because the Lord talk about killing the fire and all that. That's unnecessary. That's just like you might as well, if you say, well, I don't cook no food, but I'm smoking a cigarette. Even to the point, I heard of brothers even needing to smoke on the Day of Atonement. That's a problem. That is a problem. This is what he's telling you. He said, I would not be brought under the power of any. So if it has that much control on you, you need to look at letting that go. And it's, it's not like it's, it's something that got to be done. So yeah, I would stray away from that. Well, that's what I do personally. So that's what I would advise. And we will see what else you got. Let me look on Facebook. I'm sorry. Let me look on Facebook. See if anybody said anything on here. You can see one. Kendall Friend. Okay, you go ahead. Yeah, we had this question recently. And I just had it in a lesson a week ago too. So let's turn to Zechariah, the 5th chapter, Zechariah 5. But first of all, we know it's spiritual. We know it's spiritual. In other words, it's not talking about literal women. And when you look at it, it's really easy to see who it's talking about. So let's pick it up at Zechariah 5 and pick it up at verse 8. Pick it up at verse 8. No, I'm sorry, verse 7. Verse 7. Zechariah 5 and 7. Read it.
And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephod.
Okay, so this is a woman. It's one woman starting off. Because it goes into, there being two later, but we start off with one. And this how it is. The whole Bible is really, you only dealing with one woman, spiritually speaking, throughout the Bible, and that is the nation of Israel. The Lord likened Israel to his wife. So he said they lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephod. It's a woman sitting in the midst of the ephod. Go ahead.
And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephod, and he cast the weight of the lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted I up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork.
Okay, so two women came out. I'm messing with this thing again. Look like YouTube is messing. I'm not sure what's. Yeah, this is crazy.